Hey everyone, welcome to the first ever video of our murder mystery, true crime, whatever the hell you want to call this series. I think I'm going to go with murder mystery series, or like murder mystery videos. Should probably go with true crime, obviously, because these are crimes that have happened, but anyway. As you will see from the title of this video, we are covering the Toy Box Killer. I thought I would start with somebody rather well known so I can get used to kind of the whole research process and everything like that. So that's that. I'm not sure how I want to go about making this video. I was like, I absolutely love watching other people with their true crime videos, but I don't know how to go about it. Like, do I want to be serious? Do I want it to just be reading off all the information I've found? I mean, like, I've got it here on the laptop. Do I just read it all off? But then realistically, everybody else could do that. So yeah, I'm not sure how I want to go about it, but that's what this video is to figure out. So before we jump in, there is of course the disclaimer, obviously the fair use disclaimer that you'll see on screen, allowing for pretty much everything to be used, and the fact that all the information that I have on this case is information I found on the internet that is openly there. It's not difficult to find with a quick Google search. It is all there. So please don't try and sue me on any of this. It's literally, it's information on the internet, so cheers. Anyway, with that, let's get into today's case. So we start with David Parker Ray, born on November 6th, 1939 in Berlin, New Mexico, to father, I'm not sure if it's Cecil or Cecil. I'm going to go with Cecil. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I'm not sure how to say a lot of the names in this case, obviously, because a lot of them are from New Mexico and the way you read them isn't necessarily the way they're said. So I'm sorry if I butcher anybody's name, but yes, born to father Cecil Leland Ray and mother Nettie Opal Parker. Not a lot is known about his childhood, but during his childhood, David was raised by his grandparents after his violent and severely alcoholic and abusive father Cecil left the family and moved to Albuquerque. His mother Nettie, it's said that she couldn't handle the stress of raising 10-year-old Davis and 8-year-old Peggy, so she dropped them off with their paternal, and this kind of differs between different news outlets and things. Some say it was the paternal grandparents, others say it's the maternal grandparents. Either way, you know that the kids are left with somebody's parents. You know, they are left with a set of grandparents. Which grandparents, I am not 100% sure on. A lot say paternal because supposedly Nettie moved back in with her own parents. So obviously how they could be left with the maternal parents and then Nettie moved. But yes, so it's a mixture, but we're going with paternal grandparents in this one, and Nettie's moved back in with her parents. So the children rarely saw their own parents ever again, and neither the mother or father had any apparent bond with the children thereafter. David's grandfather raised them and as an oppressively strict Christian fundamentalist environment, misbehaviour of any kind was met with violent beatings. A friend of David's would later describe his terror of his friend David's grandfather, saying, his grandfather was very, very strict. He came from the old school where you had to be tough to survive. If his grandfather wanted David to do something, he'd jump. Maybe in today's terms he was abusive, but we called it being strict. Everywhere David went, he was exposed to violence and bullying. His father tormented him and beat him. Both his parents disposed of him. His oppressive grandfather beat him often and expected him to meet standards that hardly anyone could meet. He was bullied and beaten at school mercilessly. He was a loner, shy and reserved, and hardly opened up to anyone. He spent most of his time alone on his grandfather's ranch. So you can already kind of see very much an outcast from the get-go. Parents aren't interested, grandparents are extremely strict, and again, you don't hear much of the grandmother. Some sources said she passed away, and again, that's why you don't hear much about his sister, because she, I believe, obviously went to go and live with somebody else after the grandmother died, because the grandfather didn't want to have to deal with her. So it's all a bit of a mess for the whole family, really, not just David, but that's what it's all kind of come to said. He went to Mountain Air High School in Mountain Air, New Mexico, where he was bullied by his peers for his shyness around girls. This resulted in him abusing alcohol and drugs. This also helped raise sexual fantasies of raping, torturing and even murdering women develop. You know, the more people teach you about not being able to deal with something, the more you decide you absolutely hate, despise it and wish to end it. Hate and despise one thing, murdering it another. When Ray was 14 years old, his sister saw sadomasochistic drawings and pornography pictures of bondage practices. As a result, Ray and his sister became estranged. To be honest, I don't blame her in the slightest. Based on statements Ray has made, he is believed to have begun assaulting women at an adolescent age. So, 12, 13 odd years old, he's already... in an advisory message that was tape recorded by Ray on July 23rd, 1993, he claimed, and I quote, "I've been raping bitches ever since I was old enough to jerk off and tie little girls' hands behind their back." I mean, that's a quote in itself, isn't it? I mean, that is... been raping bitches ever since I've been able to jerk off and tie little girls' hands behind their back. Woo. He even alleged to his first wife that he had committed his first homicide sometime in 1957, when he kidnapped a woman, tied her to a tree and tortured and murdered her. However, the authorities were unable to verify this, so it's very much just hearsay on his behalf, but I mean, obviously, it's how much you want to believe a murderer. After completing high school, Ray joined the US Army, where his service included work as a general mechanic before he received an honorable discharge. Ray then worked as a maintenance man for the New Mexico Parks Department in Truthful Consequences, New Mexico, for the entirety of his adulthood until his arrest. The resort town, located approximately 5 miles from Elephant Butte, New Mexico, contained several local bars which Ray frequented for victims. This is where Ray met 37-year-old Cindy Hendy, who worked at a state park in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and who was actually fleeting convictions of grand theft and drugs charges in Washington state. They became romantically involved and bonded over their shared violent sexual fantasies. In a 1993 recorded message, Ray told his captives that they would be forced to sexually service Hendy as well. So you can see that she joins the clan and helps Ray in everything he goes on to do. Ray was divorced 4 times and had 2 children, including his accomplice daughter Glenda Jessie Jean Ray. Glenda tried to warn the FBI about her father's criminal activity in 1986. FBI agent Doug Belden recalled Jessie Ray's claims. She alleged that David Parker Ray was abducting and torturing women and then selling them to buyers in Mexico. However, the allegations were so non-specific that the FBI were unable to arrest Ray. So Ray and his occasional accomplices targeted prostitutes, luring them in with some kind of ruse such as soliciting them or pretending to be a police officer. He would then take them to his homemade torture chamber, the Toy Box, where he sexually tortured and presumably killed his victims using whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, leg spreader bars, surgical blades, electric shock machines, and saws. It is thought that he terrorised many women with these tools for many years with the help of accomplices, some of whom are alleged to have been several of the women he was dating. Inside Ray's torture room, Toy Box, which was a repurposed cargo trailer located immediately outside his Elephant Butte, New Mexico property, and was called the Toy Box by Ray, along with numerous sex toys, torture implements, syringes, and detailed diagrams showing ways of inflicted pain. There was a homemade electrical generator to electrocute his victims. In total, Ray is believed to have spent over $100,000. I mean, like, let that sink. $100,000 on the trailer, fitting it with sex toys and torture devices. I mean, that much money on raping and murdering bitches. That's dedication. You've got to give him that. That's a whole lot of dedication. Reportedly, Ray constructed elaborate contraptions to confine his victims, such as fur-lined coffins, a makeshift pillory. In addition, there were also elaborate locks and pulleys to prevent his captives from escaping. A mirror was mounted to the ceiling above the gynecological table, which he strapped his victims, so that they could see themselves be raped and tortured. He is said to have wanted his victims to see everything he was doing to them. Ray also put his victims in wooden contraptions that bent them over and immobilized them, while he had his dogs and sometimes other friends rape them. You know, because doing it yourself just isn't enough sometimes, is it? Ray often had an audio tape recording of his voice playing for his victims whenever they regained consciousness. These are the tapes that you can hear. Should you like YouTube or Google them or anything like that, you can hear the full 45-minute tape that he had produced for these women to listen to whenever he would capture them and let them obviously regain consciousness and everything like that. They're quite something. In the transcript of his tapes, Ray detailed how he would occasionally release his captives after severely drugging them to induce amnesia to prevent women from reporting the assaults. So this is literally a bit of the tape that he would let these women listen to, literally telling them that he's drugged them and that he's fucking with their mind and that nobody's going to believe them when he lets them go. We've got I get off on mind games. After we get completely through with you, you're going to be drugged up real heavy with a combination of sodium pentanol and fentobarbital. They are both extremely hypnotic drugs that will make you extremely susceptible to hypnosis, auto-hypnosis, and hypnotic suggestion. You're going to be kept drugged a couple of days while I play with your mind. By the time I get through brainwashing you, you're not going to remember a fucking thing about this little adventure. Exactly how many murder victims Ray has claimed over the years is uncertain. Investigators believe that he raped, tortured and killed up to 60 individuals over the course of his life, but they have not been able to locate any of their remains. A diary that Ray kept detailed what he did to each victim, but did not disclose where he buried their bodies. According to accomplice Cindy Hendy, Ray's fatal victims were dismembered and buried, dumped in the Elephant Butte Lake or in nearby ravines. After his arrest, Ray agreed to show authorities where he'd buried his victims, but he died before he could do so, and Hendy was unable to assist investigators in recovering any possible bodies. The Albuquerque FBI in 2011 released hundreds of images of items that were collected during the investigation of Ray. The FBI believes some of the items, which include jewellery and clothes, may have been taken from victims. The FBI, along with its law enforcement partners in New Mexico, is aggressively pursuing several leads in the search for remains of any possible victims of David Parker Ray's, said Frank Fisher of the Albuquerque field office. We are asking family and friends of missing people to look over these photos and contact us if they recognise any of these items. To which all of the items can be found still to this day on the FBI website. If you know anybody, if you've lost anybody and you are unsure, head over to the FBI website. You can find all of the images of every single piece of jewellery and clothing that they found. There are multiple pictures of each piece so that you can have a very detailed look at each photograph and tell whether or not it could be someone you know. We then move in to his victims or suspected victims. So we start with Billy Ray Bowers. Rude. We start with Billy Ray Bowers, 53 years old, disappeared from Phoenix, Arizona on September 25th, 1988. On September 28, 1989, the body of an unknown man wrapped in a blue tarp was found by a fisherman at Macria Cove at Elephant Butte Lake in Elephant Butte, New Mexico. No identification was found on him, and it was determined that he had been shot in the back of the head. The unidentified deceased was ultimately identified as Bowers in March 1999 when authorities made dental record comparisons. In 1986, Bowers was a co-owner of Canal Motors, a used car business that was on the North Van Buren Street in Phoenix, Arizona. The owners employed Ray, who worked as a mechanic, and was described as a very talented, but was often in conflict with Bowers. While incarcerated, Hendy stated that Ray told her he had killed Bowers and dumped his body in the Elephant Butte River. It's also stated in some articles that Bowers was an accomplice in a couple of murder, kidnapping, tortures, and obviously it's possible that he again went soft on Ray, or his conscience started to get the better of him and he wasn't sure about everything that they were doing, and it said that that is why Ray may have killed Bowers, is that he had a feeling that if he didn't, Bowers may go to the authorities and unfortunately stop his little joyride of murdering people. So we have another person. We have 22-year-old Jill Suzanne, and I'm really sorry, I'm not sure I'm going to make it, Troa. I'm going to go with Troa rather than like Troia. Was last seen at the Frontier restaurant. And again, I'm not sure on the whole block system. Is it the 2400 block or the 2400 block or the 2400 block? I'm going to go with the 2400 block of the East Central in Albuquerque, New Mexico, during the late evening of September 30th, 1995. It is said that she had gone to a bar with her friends earlier and then went with her girlfriend Glenda Jean Ray. When they left to go to the restaurant, witnesses reported Glenda and Jill had an argument. Glenda later told police that she left Jill at the Frontier restaurant and left with her father Ray, and that she and David went to the Elephant Butte Reservoir in the southern New Mexico. Jill has never been heard from again. Ray wrote detailed accounts of sexual tortures and burials of victims, including one in which he described an Asian woman who fitted Jill's description. Among the possessions associated with the victims was a 2-page letter dated June 1990 to an Australian young woman named Connie from an Australian man named Mark. According to Ray's journal, Connie was a white woman that he abducted and murdered in December 1995. She was 18 years old, had long blonde hair, a birthmark on her chest, and was 160 centimetres tall. The Australian Federal Police and FBI conducted an investigation hoping to locate this Mark so that he would be able to identify Connie and her family and friends, but were unable to do so. Her remains have not been located or linked to any existing unidentified or missing persons case. We then have a Sylvia Marie Parker. She was 22 and a homeless woman living on the shores of Elephant Butte Lake. She was acquaintance of Ray via his daughter, who supplied her with methamphetamine and cocaine. Parker was also the mother of 2 children and was living with them in a tent she had borrowed from David. The police later discovered that Parker's boyfriend at the time was Dennis Yancey. I don't know if it's Yancey. One of Ray's playmates. Parker disappeared on July 5th, 1997, when she was abducted and subjected to several days of torture before accomplice Yancey strangled her to death under orders by Ray. Yancey took police to where he disposed of the body with David Parker Ray and Cindy Hendy, but the body had been moved. Yancey suspected, and the police support the theory, that Ray came back to move the body later in case Yancey ever had a softening of his conscience and confessed. Which, either that or Yancey moved it and decided to blame it on Ray. 50-50 on that one, who knows? Police later identified another woman as Kelly Garrett from a videotape which dated from 1996. Garrett was found alive in Colorado after police identified her from a tattoo on her ankle. She testified that she'd gotten in a fight with her husband and decided to spend the night playing pool with friends. Ray's daughter Jessie, who knew Garrett, took her to the Blue Water Saloon in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. This is where she believes that Jessie then drugged the beer she was drinking. She offered Garrett a ride home, but instead took Garrett to her father's house, where Ray held a knife to her throat, put a dog collar around her neck, and covered her face in duct tape. When Kelly was taken into the toy box, she could see saws, chains, whips, clamps, cattle prods, bottles of oil, and metal bars. A medical cabinet with syringes and chemicals was also kept in the trailer. The chair could be moved along a 6-foot rail using a remote control. There was also a 7-foot coffin with the restraints and ventilation holes used by Ray to keep his victims in. Garrett said she endured 2 days of torture before Ray drove her back home. Ray told her husband that he had found the woman incoherent on a beach. Her husband did not believe that she could not remember where she had been, and Garrett said she did not know what to tell the police, and so she did not contact them. Her husband sued for divorce and Garrett moved to Colorado. She was then later on interviewed on the cold case files about her ordeal. Moving on, we have Angelica Montano. She came forward with a similar story of that of, again, I'm not sure how to say this. I've heard it, obviously, I want to say vigil or vigil, but I think it's Vigil or Vigil, obviously because it's Mexican. I think it's Vigil. Anyway, she said that she had been held captive by Ray after Hendy invited her to the house to pick up a cake mix. After being raped and tortured, Montano convinced the pair to release her along the highway. She was picked up by an off-duty law enforcement officer and told him what had happened, but he did not believe her and left her at a bus stop. She also later called the police about the incident, but there had been no follow-up. So I mean, that one's just bad juju on the police, really. That one, that's just, and again, there's some mixtures, because some say that like he'd slit her throat and left her on the road. Obviously this, like a lot of them say that she was just left on the side of a road, the policeman picked her up, left her at a bus stop. I'm going to assume, seeing as most kind of say that she was picked up by the policeman and then left at a bus stop, that her throat wasn't slit. Otherwise, I'd really be questioning what that off-duty police officer was up to. Just, you're bleeding out to death, it's fine. Wait for the bus. So again, there is a mixed view on how she was left, but again, obviously she survived. We then have Cynthia Vigil, who was abducted from Albuquerque parking lot by Ray and his girlfriend Cindy Hendy. She was taken to Elephant Butte, confined to the trailer and tortured. Vigil started selling drugs and sex on the streets of Albuquerque at the age of only 13. As a young woman, she was lured to Ray's toy box trailer and held captive. She later recounted her terrifying ordeal, recalling how Ray and Hendy handcuffed her and then electrocuted her with a cattle prod. That's gonna hurt like a bitch. As the couple drove the trailer out to a remote area, Vigil unscrewed the cabinet to which she was handcuffed and waited for the RV to slow. But just when she was about to make a run for it, Ray hit the brakes and she tumbled to the floor. Hendy shocked her with the cattle prod again, rendering her unconscious. When Vigil woke up, she heard Ray's voice on the tape telling her in graphic detail what would happen to her as his sex slave. For the next few days, Vigil was tortured and raped. A quote from her is, "The more pain that I showed, the more I hurt, the more he got off." But as Ray and Hendy took her from room to room, she studied her surroundings. After 3 days of torture, she finally got her chance to escape on March 22nd, 1999. After waiting until Ray had gone to work and Hendy left her alone to answer a phone call, she took her chance to grab the keys to the padlock that had been left on the coffee table. As Vigil tried to unlock herself, Hendy returned and began beating her. Hendy hit her over the head with a lamp, but Vigil picked up two crucial objects, a phone and an ice pick. With one she dialed 911 and on the other she stabbed Hendy in the neck. She then bolted, naked and covered in blood, down the road. The first car that drove by her stopped, but the woman driving wouldn't let her inside. Vigil ran to a nearby trailer to receive help from an elderly couple whom she later called her guardian angels. And then I've put this one in because it is after, obviously, Vigil getting out and them being arrested, and I just thought it's information that I feel should be in there, but obviously I wanted to kind of build the timeline, so it's in after because it happened after. So at 10:30 a.m. on June 30th, 1999, a Ralph Taylor, a 61-year-old El Paso resident, was fishing in the Elephant Butte Lake. Caught on Tutor's fishing line was an 80-pound gunny sack No clue what a gunny sack is. Filled with what he thought was animal flesh. The sack was split along its seam. He then suspected it was human body parts and alerted the authorities. The gunny sack was determined to contain human flesh but no organs or bones. This meant the unidentified victim was mutilated and dismembered before being dumped in the lake. Allegedly, Ray said, "The thing to do is cut them down the belly, scoop out their guts, fill the chest cavity with cement weights, and then use baling wire to wrap them up." Furthermore, state police found bone fragments in Elephant Butte Lake belonging to a human leg in 2011. The DNA identified the victim as a female, but she was not linked to any reported missing women. The FBI sent 100 agents to examine Ray's property and the surroundings, but no identifiable human remains were found. While awaiting trial, Ray spoke to FBI profilers and said that he was fascinated by the kidnappings of Colleen Stan and other sexually motivated kidnappings. The FBI had spoken to Ray as early as 1989 in connection with his business manufacturing and selling bondage-related sexual toys. I mean, how bad do these toys need to be for the FBI to contact you about them? You know, like how bad does your toy need to be, or your device, whatever it is you're building, for the FBI to decide we should go and check that man out? A judge ruled that the cases for crimes against Cynthia Vigil, Angelica Montano and Kelly Garrett would be severed, meaning that Ray would be tried for each separately. Prosecutors said this damaged their case, as each woman's story would otherwise have corroborated and bolstered the other's accounts. The judge also ruled that much of the evidence found in the trailer during the 1999 raid could not be admitted in the Garrett or Montano cases. So Ray's trial began on March 28, 2000. Just after the jury selection was done, he suffered a heart attack and the trial was postponed. For some reason, the judge postponed the trial further in order to try Ray for a 1996 murder in Colorado. Even though the evidence wasn't very strong, a sheet listing routine for keeping prisoners was excluded along with the torture devices in the toy box, since it couldn't be proven that they were in Ray's possession in 1996. On May 7th, shortly before or during Ray's trial for the Colorado murder, Angelica M. died of a drug overdose, taking her testimony to the grave. On May 23rd, the jury selection for Ray's new trial was finally done, but this resulted in a mistrial after two of the jurors said that they found her story unbelievable. Ray's defense was that the sex trailer was part of Ray's fantasy life and any sex was consensual. In November, a retrial began, and a few days into it, the judge passed away. The proceedings then couldn't resume until next year in April. This time, Ray was not as fortunate and was found guilty on all 12 charges. In June, his second trial began. A week into this trial, he made a plea bargain to plead guilty in exchange for his daughter, who had been an accomplice in at least one murder, receiving 5 years of probation. Consequently, Ray faced at least 224 years in prison in 2001. Ray has allegedly admitted to having had an accomplice named Billy Bowers, a previous business partner who Ray murdered. Okay. Ray's daughter Glenda Jean, Jessie Ray, was charged with kidnapping and criminal sexual penetration. She pled no contest and received a 30-month sentence with an additional 5 years to be served on probation. Her whereabouts today are unknown. In 1999, 27-year-old accomplice Dennis Roy Yancey pleaded guilty to the 1997 murder of 22-year-old Marie Parker in Elephant Butte. Yancey confessed to helping Jessie Ray lure Parker into captivity in her father's trailer. Yancey said that Parker was tortured and that Ray forced him to strangle the woman to death. Prosecutors noted that no forensic evidence was found to tie Parker to the Rays. Yancey was also charged with kidnapping, 2 accounts of conspiracy to commit a crime, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to 30 years. The Rays were not charged in Parker's murder. In 2010, Yancey was paroled after serving 11 years in prison, but release was delayed by difficulties in negotiating a plan for residence. 3 months after his release in 2011, Yancey was charged with violating his parole and was remanded to custody, where he remained until 2021, serving the rest of his original sentence. In 2000, Cindy Hendy, an accomplice who testified against Ray, received a sentence of 36 years for her role in the crimes. She was scheduled to receive parole in 2017. She was released on July 15, 2019, after serving the 2 year of her parole in prison. In March of 2022, she was living in Hamilton, Montana. On May 28, 2002, Ray was transported to the Lee County Correctional Facility in Hobbs, New Mexico, to be questioned by state police. He died of a heart attack before the scheduled interrogation took place at the age of 62. With him dead, the case became a dead end. No bodies were found, no possible victims were identified, and no old suspicious deaths related to Ray were ever officially linked to him. In November of 2002, the toy box was opened to the public with the hope that it would lead to more surviving victims coming forward. In October of 2011, the FBI performed a search of McRae Canyon near Elephant Butte Lake, looking for potential victims but found none. Cynthia Vigil went on to become a founding member of the non-profit Street Safe New Mexico. Through her work with the co-founder Christine Barber, they help give protection and assistance to women living on the street, especially those who are sex workers and vulnerable to violent predators. Both testified in court when a woman gets raped and ensures the victim gets the last word. Street Safe assist the Albuquerque Police Department with investigating the West Mesa serial killer, the bone collector who also preyed on sex workers, as many serial killers do. As far as her role in stopping David Parker Ray, she remains both modest and strong, saying that she didn't save other women, she saved herself. And we will end on the quote from her, which is, "I'm not his victim. I was never his victim. I wish he could have known that." And that is the story of David Parker Ray and the known victims that he has killed, somewhat killed, raped, tortured. Unfortunately, all of the others are still unknown to this day, still not found, and I imagine everybody that was involved will take it to the grave, which is, I mean, very unfortunate for everybody that has lost somebody, that has a missing persons case out. But I mean, it's a very difficult one when you've literally got somebody drugging people so much that they end up with amnesia. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this case down below. I am more than happy to talk about it in the comments with you all. Thank you ever so much for watching this video, and hopefully I will see you in another one.